Can you hear me now? Anybody let me know. Nobody can hear me. Can you hear me now? Okay, thank you. You can hear me now. In any event, I'll start that over. I probably should just start live again, but that's not in the rule. I'm trying to get this separate mic to work. It's a much better sound, but it never seems to work right. So when I record off the air, it's a great sound. When I record live, it just doesn't come through. So I don't know how to go about fixing that, but I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to be live. Thank you to today's sponsor, which is Hornets Nest Deli, and was talking about that sponsor. Now, it's not a surprise. People know that Hornets Nest is one of my clients. I work with them. I'm there all the time. A million meetings a day happen there. Dino's a very good. We've become good friends as after working together. But they have these new lunch bowls, these home fries bowls, which are incredible. And the home fries, cheese. He puts chipotle in there. I do chorizo bowls because I love chorizo, but he did it with. He actually did one with a Greek, the hero meat, and the tzatziki, whatever that Greek sauce is. So a lot of options there. Go try them. They're not expensive, like $9 to $10. When you add meat, it's like $11 or something, but really good. And as always, I support Hornets Nest. I'm there. They're a client. Really good business. On a few notes before we get started on, we're going to talk about some business stuff locally today, particularly about one business and then business in general along the shoreline and some marketing things. But before we get too far, starting not this Saturday, is it this Saturday? No, not this Saturday, but next Saturday. If you don't know this, we ran a tennis tournament about 2 weeks ago. And decent turnout. It was the first one the town had done in a long time. I organized it. It ran over a weekend and went quite well. The champion on the men and women's side were both from Guilford, which is fine. Some really good matches. It was a lot of fun. Next year will be a much bigger event. We'll do a junior section, all that sort of thing. But while we were setting up this tennis tournament, there were a lot of people at Foot Park who were, why don't you do this for pickleball? Now, I'm going to admit I don't know how to play pickleball. I've never played it. But the demand is huge. And so we have pickleball at basically every park now. We have pickleball inside the community center. We have pickleball in our gyms. Like pickleball is growing exponentially. I think it's one of the fastest growing sports there is. So not this Saturday, which is, I just want to look at the date. This Saturday is the 8th. It's not the 8th. We're aiming for the 15th and 16th. We didn't do it this weekend because it's Columbus Day, because we have, or Indigenous Peoples Day or whatever. The 15th and 16th is what we're aiming for. And pretty soon you'll be able to go on the Parks and Rec website and register for that if you're interested. It's single elimination. So if you play one match, you play one match. We're not going to be a consolation tournament. It'll be, well, that's simple. That said, if you're interested, sign up for that. And we'll be pushing it more and more on Brantford 7. So I had a bunch of topics prepared for today, but I got a call this afternoon from the owner of a local restaurant and who wants some help and who's doing some things to change the overall brand. And to those who have been to this restaurant, you may understand this, but we're going to talk about this and use this as an example of what I think is a very good owner. This person is not an advertiser. They may be. We'll talk to them in the future, but at the very least, we'll give them some publicity because I admire what they're trying to do. And we're asked so often, what is economic development on a local level? How does a town, like a state, can give tax breaks? They can do all these things to attract businesses. But on a town level, it's a slippery slope to start giving tax breaks to attract a business to town. It's a slippery slope to give them a discount on property tax. It's a slippery slope to try financial things to get them to come here. And part of that is also what responsibility is on a business to create a business model that actually works in the town and the location they want to open. So about, I don't know, 3-4 months ago, I got an email to say, hey, can you come and check out a place on the town green called 1928, right? It's a little, the brand was a speakeasy type bar. And it was funny, that was opening, and like the next week, Pearl Wine Bar was opening, and I ended up going to both of those on the same night. So my first reaction to 1928 is a few things, right? It's a speakeasy, which is those old, during Prohibition, couldn't find the door, upstairs, back door, basements, whatever, door to get in. And then to get in, you had to give a password or a code to get inside. And so this had purchased or rented out, whatever, prime real estate on the Brantford Green. Now, if you're going to pay, in my opinion, pay for prime real estate, the best thing you have there is your glass fronts, right? You have the front of the house. That's a big part of marketing. People drive by, see that it's busy, they see other people in it. Nobody wants to go into an empty place, whether it's a restaurant or bar, what have you. They like other people, they like energy. So this place had built a little, you walk in, and when you walk into a small room, and then a wall that you can't see through. So you can't see who's inside. And from a business perspective, that I get it if you're a speakeasy and your entrance is the back door or it's the second floor somewhere, but I had a hard time understanding from a business perspective, why pay premium storefront rent if you're covering up the storefront? It didn't really make sense. Because that was the first initial reaction to this. I have no idea if that's changing or not. I'm just giving you my initial reaction. And my goal, and people know this, my goal is that every business is successful. I live in this town. I don't want to see empty spaces. We want new things opening all the time. We want to see when people go out of business, it's usually, hopefully, it's because they're retiring. Like, we don't want to see businesses fail. So anything we can do to help, even if they're not my clients, even if they're not paying us for advertising or consulting or all that kind of stuff, we want them to be successful. So that was the first question. You're paying rent on storefront town green property, which is a premium rent, and then covering that up. That was a question for me. Then we went in. Now, most people know this. I'm not a big drinker. I'll drink. I had a drink last night at Cafe Fiore. By the way, Cafe Fiore is a really good restaurant. From a value standpoint, it's spectacular. We'll talk about that in a second if we go back to that. But go in, look at the drink menu, and honestly, the drinks are $18 a piece. And this brings up a couple questions. Often people don't quite understand what Brantford is as a town. I understand that right now we have listeners, and after the fact, we'll be listeners later from East Haven and North Brantford and from Guilford. And those towns are not quite in the same boat as Brantford is. Brantford is marketed by no one's fault. It just kind of is as this beautiful, stunning, wealthy shoreline town. There are areas of Brantford that are beautiful, stunning, wealthy shoreline town. But that's not Brantford. And so if you say, as somebody who is opening a restaurant, wow, there's 28,000 people in Brantford, and they are a shoreline community, and it's a wealthy area, they're going to be able to afford a high-end meal, high-end drinks, you are mistaken, because there's not 28,000 wealthy people in Brantford. I would say the number of wealthy people who don't mind spending on a regular basis a large amount is significantly smaller than 28,000 people. The second thing you have to know about, especially restaurants, is no matter how all restaurants, even bad restaurants, are busy Friday and Saturday night. Like, people come from further around on Friday and Saturday night. That radius of customers will come from 20, 30 miles as opposed to 4 or 5 miles. Success for a restaurant is, can you get people in that door Sunday night through Thursday night? You still have to hire staff. You still have to pay electric bills. You're still going to be open. You still have to pay rent. But can you get people in there and cover those bills Sunday through Thursday night? And that's the first question you should always ask yourself when a new restaurant opens. Wow, is this place going to, they'll be great Friday and Saturday. People will go a long distance to go there. Can they get people in a smaller mile radius, so within 4 or 5 miles in that town, maybe the neighboring towns, can they get people to go to their restaurant, go to their business from Sunday night to Thursday night? And so when this speakeasy first opened, I said to myself, okay, so we're paying premium rent and then not using the biggest advantage of that premium rent. That's the first reaction. The second one was, can they get Brantford people, locals, to go to this place Sunday night to Thursday night? On a night out, Friday and Saturday, you'll be busy. People don't mind going out. It's the end of their week. They're coming from a larger region. They don't mind spending a little extra money. During the week, people are more cost conscious, and it's locals. And Brantford is not as wealthy. So there were significant $18 drinks is hard as a business person looking at the demographics of Brantford, looking at what the demands are in Brantford, looking at you being next to a place, Pasta Cozy, Pearl Wine Bar, other places kind of within walking distance, home restaurant within walking distance where you're going to get drinks, maybe not the top shelf stuff, but you're going to get it for $12 or $13. Is it going to be able to compete? Are people going to pay that extra $5 on a Wednesday night from a local to go to that place? And I don't know what their numbers were, but I give Tony, who's the owner, a ton of credit for kind of rebranding. And so I got a call today. They're having a grand opening November 3rd, I believe, on a whole new, not a whole new, it still has this speakeasy kind of look. I don't know what they're doing with the front of it, but they are changing their price points, not necessarily the ingredients of there. And he made clear to make this clear, and I want to make this clear to our audience. He's still using the top shelf stuff, but he's cutting back on clearly his margins and selling some of those drinks for 13, 14, significantly less, so he can be in the realm of reason. The second thing was they really didn't have any food on their menu, and they're adding food to their menu. So I am going tomorrow night. If you're around, come by, stop by, say hello, talking to Tony, and then hopefully maybe working on getting the word out more about them. But it's so often a thing we don't see restaurants do, and we don't see businesses do. Part of what is, we can yell about economic development, we can yell about what government can do to attract business. And what they can really do is create an environment that is conducive to business. But a business or an investor in a business who is trying to open in a town has an obligation to know the demographics of that town, to know who are they trying to sell to. Just because you have a unique idea, just because you have an idea that you absolutely love, doesn't mean that town's the right place for it. And so there's a difference between a restaurateur or a hobbyist opening a whatever shop, candy shop, and a business person. Because the business person doesn't start with the business idea. The business person starts with, what's the demographic of that area that I want to open in? And how do I create something that addresses a need in that demographic? And this is something conversation I have with every single one of the clients I work with, every consulting client I have, every time we look at a new menu, every time we analyze a new menu item, every time we look at a price point. It's not about, I'm great at making X, I'm great at doing Y. It's about, are there people who will keep you busy? Is there a demand in that area for what you're providing? So part of this is the amazingly eclectic town Brantford is. So a good example and a good comparison is in Guilford on the Green, a restaurant just opened called Prime on Whitfield. I believe Prime on Whitfield. Went there last week for one of their soft opening nights. Will tell you, I will highly recommend it. Again, not an advertiser. They don't pay me for anything. I went there, did not get a free meal. I went and paid as a normal patron. Steak was excellent. They have some sort of special oven that they built in the back. Not a huge steak menu, and the menu is actually quite big. A lot of seafood, a lot of other options on that menu. But Guilford's a different town. It's a different type of town. The average income is higher, and they don't have the low end that Brantford has. They don't have the anywhere near the diversity in economics and economic demographics that Brantford has. Could Prime survive in Brantford? I don't think so. If you're going out to dinner in an average steakhouse for two, now I don't drink, so drinking is not a huge part of any meal that I have, right? I may have one or two, but it's most dinners I have a Diet Coke. So I'm a little bit bad, but most people who go out to dinner and have a steak and have higher end meals, they're spending $30 a plate minimum. Steaks could be higher. They're getting appetizers and they're getting drinks. They're looking at probably $120 to $150 for two people to eat out. And so the question is, Are there a significant amount of people who on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday night will fill your restaurant willing to spend that amount of money on the product you're providing? And I would argue in Guilford, it's much more likely than it is in Brantford. And so that's where really good business people separate themselves. There's always people who I can't wait to start a restaurant. I want to start a restaurant that has the best quality food and the best this and the best whatever. But if it doesn't meet the needs of the town and the area you're opening, if it doesn't measure the demographic of that area, the actual income and the diversity of that area, you're going to have a problem. Yes, somebody could look at Brantford and say 28,000 residents, beautiful shoreline town. We're going to have a lot of customers here on a Tuesday night. And I guarantee you, you are not going to have a lot of customers there on a Tuesday night if you were priced the way Prime is. In Guilford, you can say 22,000 residents, and a much higher percentage of those are still going to go out to dinner and spend $120, $150 for two on dinner on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night. And so I give a lot of credit to Tony, who called up and said, we're making some changes. And I said, I'm going to be blunt. And what I just said to you, much of it was what I told him. I said, the word on the street, when I stopped in and saw it, what I heard from a lot of people was, nice place, really cool looking inside. Really cool place. The prices didn't make sense. They were too high for Brantford. And they didn't have a lot of food items. He's changing that. And so we want to give credit to those. So often we watch restaurants fail because they fail to adjust. You know, so many businesses, I have a job consulting and doing marketing consulting for small businesses. The reason I have that job is because so often people are very, very good at one thing. They're good at being a plumber or electrician or cooking French food or making great desserts. They're great at those things. But understanding the research that goes into opening it, understanding that marketing has to be an integral part of your business plan. There's a million people who look at marketing as some afterthought, right? We're going to start this business. And we're going to look at our costs of goods, and we're going to look at the cost of building out the location, and we're going to look at the cost of insurance and the cost of staffing and the cost of, and they don't build marketing into that. And they open the doors and they're busy as hell that first month. It's amazing. Then sales start dropping off and dropping off and dropping off and dropping off and dropping off. And the reason for that is they didn't build marketing into their initial plan. And marketing should be based on not how do we have this product and sell it, but first, how do we look at the demographics of what's around us and create a product, a restaurant, or a service that meets that demographic? And so part of this is just me talking business right now, right? But I was very impressed when you see a business owner say, wait a minute, I got to read the tea leaves here. There's some writing on the wall. Brantford may not be what I thought it was, but I've invested in this spot. How do I create a business that addresses that? Now, there's many other reasons a business doesn't work. And we unfortunately have seen the issues at Donovan's Reef here in Brantford. You know, I know there's a huge story there. And the Sound wrote an article, and it is what it is. And there's things that we know behind the scenes, and there's employees that have been there. But I want to say this, if nothing else. This is not to defend anybody. COVID impacted everybody differently. Yes, there was a lot of PPP money thrown out. And some of it helped companies, and some of it didn't come close to doing enough. If you had a high rent and you were able to stay open to offset some of your losses with takeout, great. But if you had to shut down for any significant amount of time, the cost of reopening, getting all your goods again, hard time getting all those goods, even if you got a significant amount of PPP money the government was throwing out, doesn't mean you were successful. And sometimes the price of falling so far behind during that time isn't seen for 6 months or a year. So they could have been trying and working and trying to get out of this. And the thought process for a business is so often, all right, one good month and we'll get ahead. One good month and we'll pay some of the back stuff. 2 good months we can do this. And they always just come up short. So many business owners end up getting an awful rap and bad, not just press, but bad word of mouth and all of those things when they're really trying. They tried to do their best. Sometimes it just doesn't work. And that's when it doesn't work, there's collateral damage. So we have an empty location. There are going to be employees that didn't get paid. They can go to the labor department. I think there's some funds that can help some of that. It doesn't mean someone's a bad person. It means that some things don't work out. And COVID is going to have, and there's still going to be companies that are still going to pay the price because they're still carrying so much debt from COVID. An example on that on a much larger scale may be cruise ships. Cruise ships took a massive hit. In order to survive, took out massive loans. Right? Their stocks plummeted. They took out huge loans that they have to pay back, which means they have to charge more to pay down that debt moving forward. Well, I was on a cruise a few months back and it was 40% full. Cruises are still going out at 40 to 50% full. You can go on a week-long cruise out of New York City for two people, $1,300, $1,400. And so, what? There's some idiot posting spam. Sorry about that if it's coming up. I don't know what site that's coming from, but cruise ships may be a victim of this. It'll take a few years before they really get there. But when some of those notes get called in, they can really end up having to pay the price for that. So just because we see a business fail doesn't mean they weren't busting their ass, doesn't mean they weren't trying. Some things that are beyond their control happen, and there's just no way around it. So my inclination when I see a business like that fail, and I know the employees didn't get paid, and I don't know if they worked. Employees should never be working and not get paid. And if you're not paid for a week, you shouldn't be there the next week. I understand you don't want to lose your job. But whatever happened there, I don't think it was from a lack of trying. I think there was some effort put in there. But that said, I am going to update you in the future on 19. I'm going to go there tomorrow night and check it out. Check out the new menu. Check out what he's trying to do. It's a good example of a smart businessman saying, let me pivot. I tried something. It may not be giving me the response. Maybe I overestimated the income in Brantford. Maybe I overestimated Brantford's willingness to spend more on a quality drink on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night. Some places have mastered that. And I'll give you the example. One is Rosso Vino, and two is Cafe Fiore. Cafe Fiore last night, I was there for a business dinner. For $19, I believe my chicken parm dinner was. It's chicken parm over pasta, and it comes with those freaking garlic bread, which I swear to God, they're laced with something that make me addicted to them because they're unbelievable. And then a salad. It's just a spectacular, the business plan nails it. There is no one who necessarily can't afford Cafe Fiore, which means during the week, they're still going to get locals going there. They'll be packed Friday and Saturday, and they may not turn the tables over nearly as much Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but it's still going to get them through. Really good business model. Understands the demographic of the town, reaches a real demand for people, fairly inexpensive drinks, good food. Would I say it's the best food? I'll take Rosso Vino's food over Cafe Fiore, but it's good food, it's quality food, and you get value, and that's the market that Brantford is. If you want to go a little bit higher end, you can go to a place like Prime in Guilford, where the demographics better match that type of restaurant. And so the only reason I had this conversation today is because, and talked about this on the podcast, is so often we ask ourselves this question, what are you doing for economic development? What is the administration doing, either on a state level, on a national level, or on a local level? What are we doing to attract a business? There's many things you can do from keep your town center vibrant and invest in your infrastructure. Investing in things like Walsh Intermediate School is a huge help for economic development because there were so many that were taking their kids and didn't want to live in Brantford when those kids reached middle school age. That solves that. Keeps more kids in town. More kids in town is more people to buy locally, that sort of thing. So there's things you can do on a much larger level. But there's also a responsibility of every single business owner before you open, or if you're open, to adjust based on the demographics. And while you may feel you're a great X, Y, or Z person, we make the best of this. If there's no demand for that during the week, you're not going to succeed long term. And so seeing some businesses that are pivoting, saying, wait, let's understand this, let's adjust, is a really good thing to see. And it's good to see they have that investment of being in Brantford. They have that investment of changing and adapting as much as they can to meet the local demographics. So this was a little bit of me business talk today because I have these conversations every day with clients. By the way, if you're interested in working with me on consulting, feel free to give me a call. I'll be glad to talk to you. That being said, from a political standpoint, it does help, answer that. We always say, oh, there's vacancies there, and the first selectman must not be doing his job, or the state is losing some jobs and they're not doing their job. It's not always the case. That business has a lot of things happening internally, and sometimes that business isn't a good business. Sometimes that business didn't belong in Connecticut, or that business didn't belong in Brantford, or did a poor job adjusting to the Brantford market. And a lot of that is, we can yell politically about it, but the fact of the matter is, a lot of that is on those business and that business owner. If you are a tradesperson or a specialist, or you're a chef, or somebody who wants to open a restaurant, talk to a business person first. Create a business plan that meets the needs of the demographic where you want to open, as opposed to meets your ego. I'm phenomenal at French food doesn't meet your ego. But it may beat it, but you're not going to be a successful restaurant. I'd rather have 2 or 3 successful restaurants than one that specializes in the only thing I'm good at. And that's what business is versus being a hobby. Okay, that's my rant for today. Just a little bit. What is this? Maybe we should support small, medium business instead of funneling money into Israel. Okay, I don't know what this is. Maria, I agree. Their chicken parm is the best. John, so having John says he agrees is a massive compliment to me. So John, thank you so much from the Parthenon Diner. I was there actually a couple days ago. All right, and I can't, for some reason, I can't scroll down to the comments, but thank you for joining us. I don't know who this person is spamming, but economic development improves when the demographic shows less black. Okay, so we just have some racist spamming stuff right now. Sorry about that. If you're seeing that, I don't know if everybody else is seeing it. I know that I am. But thank you for joining me. Tomorrow, we will get back to politics. And tomorrow, I'll also announce the final schedule for our candidates for the next 2 weeks and those interviews. Until then, guys, have a great night. And we will talk